Have you ever felt like there's something off about this world? A rule that sounds perfectly reasonable, but the moment you follow it, everything falls apart. A loop of logic, where the harder you try to escape, the tighter it pulls you in. You're not alone. From brilliant mathematicians to the loneliest philosophers, they've all faced paradoxes, questions without answers, contradictions that refuse to be solved. Welcome to SS Sov I Paradox, where we don't just tell stories, we stir doubt, we spark wonder, and we awaken the quiet confusion inside your mind. In this video, you'll begin a journey told in 6 chapters, each one a doorway into the deepest paradoxes in all of human knowledge. When rules become traps, and the more you obey, the more they consume you. When infinity isn't about size, but about being, ungraspable. When truth and lies trade places with just one clever sentence. From ancient paradoxes like Zeno, Hilbert, and Russell to modern riddles shaking both physics and psychology, we won't just retell them, we'll question reality with you, because maybe paradoxes aren't flaws in logic, but mirrors reflecting how we see the world. Chapter 1: Paradoxes of Logic and Self-Reference. The traps that shook the foundations of modern thought. Some sentences seem harmless at first, but once you stop and think, they open a bottomless pit where logic, language, and reality devour one another. Here's an example. Someone stands in front of you and says, "I'm lying." What do you believe? If they're lying, then their statement is true. They're lying. But if it's true, then they're not lying. And if they're not lying, then the statement, "I'm lying," is false. But if it's false, they are lying, which means it's true, and around it goes. This is one of the most famous paradoxes in philosophy, the liar's paradox, a short, simple sentence that's shaken classical logic for more than 2,000 years. And what makes this paradox so dangerous isn't that it's wrong, but that it can't be clearly labeled as right or wrong. In the world of formal logic, where everything must be neatly classified as true or false, a statement like this acts like a self-replicating virus, causing the entire system to collapse from within. What's fascinating is, this isn't just a word game. 20th century thinkers like Bertrand Russell and Kurt Gödel realized that this very form of self-reference was one of the greatest threats to any logical system. Russell offered his own version, what's now called the barber paradox. In a small village, there's a barber who follows one rule. He only shaves those who do not shave themselves. But here's the problem. Who shaves the barber? If he shaves himself, he's breaking the rule. If he doesn't shave himself, then by the rule, he must shave himself. A perfect loop. No way out. Both the liar and the barber are symptoms of something deeper. When a system tries to apply its own rules to itself, it breaks down. Self-reference becomes a trap with no escape. And this isn't some abstract philosophical riddle. It affects how we build language, how we reason, even how we write computer code today. In mathematics, this paradox reaches its peak through the work of Kurt Gödel. He proved that in any logical system strong enough to describe arithmetic, there will always be statements that can't be proven true or false. He used the very tools of mathematics to prove the limits of mathematics, a paradoxical act, but one that was precise, down to the letter. Since then, these paradoxes are no longer just strange little puzzles to ignore. They've become mirrors, reflecting the limits of human understanding, and they force us to face a painful truth. That truth itself isn't always clear, and sometimes the very thing we rely on most, logical thinking, can lead us straight into a dead end. It might sound abstract, but really, it's not. Have you ever been in an argument where both sides were right in their own way, and yet no one could find common ground? Or caught in a quiet hesitation when even you weren't sure if you were being honest or just convincing yourself? If so, you've lived inside a paradox, one that no textbook can teach you how to escape. And that's exactly why simple phrases like, "I'm lying," or "the sentence next to this one is true," have haunted some of the greatest minds in history. From Aristotle to Gödel, for centuries. Because these are not just words. They are whispers from the very edge of human thought, reminding us that even the most obvious truths deserve to be questioned again. Chapter 2. The Twists of Reason. When we begin to realize that even the simplest ideas, like true and false, can tie themselves into knots, we step deeper into the strange world of reason's twists, a place where logic becomes a double-edged blade. It can illuminate or lead us into a maze of contradictions. We leave behind the questions about truth explored in the previous chapter and enter a realm where even the sharpest reasoning can betray the one who wields it. A place where deeper understanding leads not to clarity, but to dead ends. And it all begins with a terrifying promise. One day, a prisoner is sentenced. The judge delivers the verdict with a cold voice. "You will be hanged on a surprise day next week." The prisoner falls silent, but then he begins to think. If he's still alive by Thursday night, he'll know the hanging must be on Friday. But that wouldn't be a surprise. So, it can't be Friday. If it can't be Friday, then on Wednesday night, if he's still alive, he'll know it must be Thursday. That wouldn't be a surprise either. And so the reasoning continues. One day at a time, he rules out every possible day. His conclusion? He won't be hanged at all. But then, on Wednesday, at noon, as sunlight slips through the narrow bars of his cell, the guard arrives, and in that stunned, breathless moment, the prisoner realizes it was his own confidence in logic that made the surprise strike so deep. The unexpected hanging paradox teaches us something humbling, that some truths lie beyond logic, that no matter how precise our calculations, Some endings arrive anyway, sudden, silent, and unstoppable. And when logic breaks, we glimpse something deeper. That right thinking alone doesn't always free us from invisible traps. Sometimes, the very system we live in is designed to keep us stuck. Chapter 3. When the universe and our minds confront infinity. If the earlier paradoxes planted doubt in our perception, this chapter takes us even further, into the realms where human reason seems to dissolve beneath the vastness of reality. Perhaps never before has the journey into paradox stirred this question so intensely. Do we really understand the world we live in? And the first step of this journey begins in a place that seems ordinary, a hotel. But be careful. This is a hotel that never runs out of rooms. Imagine a hotel with infinite rooms. Every room is already occupied. And yet, if a new guest arrives, the manager simply asks every guest to move one room over. Room 1 moves to room 2, room 2 to room 3, and so on. And just like that, room 1 becomes free. Not only that, if a bus pulls up, carrying an infinite number of new guests, they too can all be accommodated. Each current guest simply moves to double their current room number. Room 1 goes to 2, 2 to 4, 3 to 6, leaving all the odd-numbered rooms empty for the newcomers. This is the Grand Hotel Paradox, also known as Hilbert's Hotel, and it teaches us something strange. In the world of infinity, concepts like full or empty start to lose all meaning. Where infinity reigns, everyday intuition collapses. Full no longer means there's no more room, and infinite isn't just a really big number. It's something entirely different, something beyond measurement, beyond comprehension. Hilbert's Hotel becomes a mirror, reflecting the deepest mysteries about the nature of the universe, a place where our definitions of space and quantity echo back to us as distant, disconnected whispers. And just when you begin to adapt to the strange idea that infinity can stretch and bend, the universe unveils a paradox even stranger, one that forces us to ask, what is it that truly exists before our eyes? Imagine a cat locked inside a sealed box. Inside the box, there's a simple mechanism. If a radioactive atom decays, a vial of poison shatters, killing the cat. But if the atom doesn't decay, the cat survives. Here's the twist. At the quantum level, until the box is opened, the atom is both decayed and not decayed, which means the cat is both alive and dead at the same time. Schrödinger's cat is not just a bizarre thought experiment. It's a haunting accusation, aimed at the way quantum physics shatters the logic of everyday life. Before we observe, all outcomes exist at once. Only when we look does reality collapse into a single state. If that's true, then does reality even exist without an observer? A cold question drifts through the mind. Could it be that our very act of looking helps create the world around us? And if so, are we smaller or greater than we've ever imagined? The answer might be hidden among the stars that sing quietly in the night sky. As we gaze upward into a sky of endless stars, one question has haunted humanity for generations. If the universe is so vast and so ancient, why have we never met anyone else out there? The Fermi paradox cuts straight into our loneliness. If even a tiny fraction of planets harbor life, our galaxy should be teeming with alien civilizations. And yet, the silence is absolute. Perhaps civilizations destroy themselves before they ever step into space. Perhaps they're quietly watching us, the way we watch animals in a zoo. Or maybe we've been completely wrong about what life truly is. Each star shining in the night is no longer just a distant light, but a question without an answer, echoing from the dawn of the universe. But before we drift too far into dreams of the stars, a sudden and brutal paradox pulls us back to Earth, to the flaw in logic itself and the systems we've built around it. Imagine a small village where one strange rule exists. The barber must shave everyone who doesn't shave themselves. So, who shaves the barber? If he shaves himself, he breaks the rule, because he's only allowed to shave those who don't shave themselves. But if he doesn't shave himself, then by the rule, he must be shaved by himself. And just like that, logic collapses into an endless loop, a place where no answer can exist. The barber paradox exposes a bitter truth, that even in the most well-defined systems, there are always hidden cracks waiting to bring the whole structure down. Just like the cat that's both alive and dead, the hotel that's both full and empty, and the stars that are both glowing and silent. Reason itself cannot escape the spirals it creates. By now, you've likely felt it. We're not only facing the paradoxes of the outside world, but the ones living deep within our own minds. And the journey is far from over. Deeper mysteries still remain. Questions with no answers are still waiting. So let's keep going. A nightmare, even more terrifying. If you think logic loops only exist inside the mind of an individual, get ready to step into a new kind of trap. One where an entire society is caught in the invisible snares it built for itself. During war, a desperate pilot tries to escape his mission by declaring himself insane. But the rule responds. If you're sane enough to fear for your own safety, then you're not insane. And if you're not insane, you have to keep flying. If you try to prove you're crazy, you've just proven you're sane. If you do nothing, you're still forced to serve. This is Catch-22, the famous paradox from Joseph Heller's novel. And now, it has become a symbol for all the absurd loops in modern society. It's no longer just a logical puzzle, it's the lived reality of millions, asking for permission to be free, but the very act of asking proves you're not worthy of freedom. Catch-22 stirs a suffocating kind of helplessness.
When you understand the rules so well, only to realize you can never win. When the system isn't built to solve problems, but to protect itself. A permanent spiral where logic becomes the gatekeeper of injustice. And even when you believe you've seen through the absurdity, another trap awaits. Numbers, data, facts that seem objective can still betray you. Imagine this. You're facing 2 treatments for a life-threatening illness. Overall data shows that treatment A works better than treatment B. But when you break the data down, by gender, by age, by health conditions, you discover that in every individual group, treatment B actually performs better. How is that possible? How can B be better in every group, but still lose in the total? That's Simpson's paradox, where trends within each subgroup can completely reverse when you combine the data. Simpson's paradox is like a mirror, reflecting the danger of trusting surface-level truths. In today's world, drowning in data, it offers a bitter reminder. Numbers don't tell the whole story. Truth doesn't always lie in the polished total, but deep beneath, in the tiny hidden layers, in the quiet corners of analysis. Because if you're not careful, truth can be twisted. Beliefs can be steered, not by obvious lies, but by perfectly accurate numbers. And that's how reason, the most powerful tool we possess, can also become our most dangerous traitor. These paradoxes don't just challenge the mind, they reach into the deepest parts of our emotions, the anxiety we feel in the face of uncertainty, the quiet rage at invisible injustice, the confusion of doubting our own senses and logic. But it's within these tangled loops that we learn the greatest lesson of all. That true understanding doesn't come from avoiding paradox, but from stepping into it and learning to live with it. Chapter 4. Paradoxes that touch the nature of existence. Having passed through paradoxes of logic, of time, of self-awareness, we now arrive at the edge of what human knowledge can bear, the place where existence itself, belief, and hope begin to unravel. This chapter is no longer just about intellect. It's no longer just about intellect. This is the heart, the soul, the place where the biggest questions have no simple answers. We now enter a chapter built entirely on paradox, where a single choice, a single act, or a single belief can shake the very meaning of what it is to be human. Would you dare to reverse time if it meant sacrificing yourself? Imagine you had a time machine, and one day you decide to go back to the moment when your grandfather was still young. But something happens. By accident, you prevent him from ever meeting your grandmother, and that changes everything. Your parents are never born, and so you're never born. But if you were never born, how could you have gone back to cause it? And if you still exist, what force is holding this paradox together? This is the grandfather paradox, one of the most puzzling contradictions about time travel and causality. It raises a metaphysical question about fate and free will. Can we truly change the past, without destroying the future. And if we can't, then maybe every choice we make is just one link in a chain that can never be broken. Some scientists believe that if you go back in time and change something, you're not erasing yourself. You're creating a new timeline, a new version of you in a parallel universe. But no matter how it works, this paradox reminds us, when you reach into the roots of your own origin, you're playing with the very fabric of existence. Can something impossibly small change the entire world? A single grain of millet falls to the ground, and you hear nothing. But when thousands or millions fall together, you hear a sound. So when does nothing become something? Why does the tiniest thing, when repeated enough, become massive? This is the grain of millet paradox, the paradox of accumulation. It's the whisper of time and persistence. A small action, a single vote, a quiet word, or even silence may seem invisible, but multiplied across millions, it can shift history, break foundations, or build an entirely new world. This paradox isn't just philosophy, it's a reminder of responsibility, that none of us are too small to make a difference. Every choice you make, every step you take, is a single grain of millet, and your life is the sound you leave behind. Why is the night sky dark if the universe is filled with stars? You look up at the night sky, a dark, endless canvas, scattered with stars. But if the universe is infinite, if there are stars in every direction, then why isn't every point in the sky glowing? Olber's paradox forces us to question what we thought we understood best: darkness. Because this darkness isn't the absence of light, it's the trace of a universe with a beginning. It's because the light from stars too far away hasn't had time to reach us. Because space itself is expanding, stretching their wavelengths beyond what the human eye can see. From a simple question about the night sky, this paradox opened the door to all of modern cosmology. From the Big Bang Theory to cosmic microwave background radiation, it shows us that sometimes darkness is the strongest proof that light once existed. Can a green apple prove that all ravens are black? You see a green apple, it's not black, and it's not a raven. What does that have to do with the statement, all ravens are black? According to formal logic, that apple is a confirming example. But your heart resists. What does an apple have to do with a raven? The paradox of the raven shakes the foundation of how we believe we understand the world. It reveals the disconnect between our intuition and our logic, between what we feel and what we can prove. This paradox isn't just about reasoning, it's about belief, about the fragility of evidence, and how truth sometimes hides in places no one would expect. How do you keep living when all hope is gone? Deep within a prisoner of war camp during the Vietnam War, Admiral James Stockdale survived 8 years of torture, isolation, and darkness, while many others did not. But he wasn't an optimist. In fact, he once said,
The optimists were the first to die. The Stockdale paradox, the paradox of faith and realism, teaches us the most vital lesson for surviving hardship. Never deny the brutal facts of the present, but never, ever give up hope that you will prevail. Not either, or, but both. Unshakable faith, ruthless clarity. This is the only paradox in the chapter that doesn't belong to physics or logic. It lives in the soul. And it's not just about survival. It's about how we grow, heal, and rise again from suffering. As we close chapter 4, we begin to see something clearer. There are paradoxes that aren't meant to be solved. They exist to make us think more deeply, feel more honestly, and live more fully. From time machines shaped by fate, to the silent fall of millet seeds, from the darkness of the sky to the light of unshaken belief, they all remind us this universe and we ourselves are complex, mysterious, and never as simple as we'd like to believe. So now, let me ask you, can you feel a paradox somewhere in your own life? If so, share your story, because maybe it's the beginning of a brand new chapter waiting to be told.
Chapter 5. The Paradox of Choice. When humans believe in what they can't believe, there are paradoxes that don't live out in the stars. They aren't tied to space or time. They live right here, inside the human heart and mind. And they appear in the simplest of moments. When you buy a lottery ticket, order from a restaurant menu, or put your faith in a chance that seems impossible. But it's in those quiet little moments that the biggest spirals of logic and emotion begin to take shape. Because we don't live only by reason, we live by hope. We don't act only for results, we act for how things make us feel. And that is what creates the strangest paradoxes of being human. Now imagine this. You're holding a small card. One side says, the statement on the other side is true. You flip it over. It says, the statement on the other side is false. At first glance, it feels like a child's game. But think again. If the first side is true, then the second must also be true. But that would make the first false. If the first is false, then the second must be false, which would make the first true. And now, you're back where you started. A loop with no way out. This is the card paradox, a paradox of self-reference. But it's not just a logic trick, it's a mirror. Because sometimes we're just like that card, saying contradictory things, believing opposite beliefs, and never realizing we're trapped inside them. We think we act with logic, but in truth, what moves us most is emotion. Now let's step into a story that feels more familiar. A restaurant, a meal, a mistake. You arrive at the restaurant, place your order, and everything goes wrong. The food is incorrect. The service is slow. A glass of water spills across the table. But then something unexpected happens. The manager walks over,
offers a sincere apology, brings you a special dessert, and even gives you a discount for next time. You leave the restaurant, not angry, but actually wanting to return. That's the service recovery paradox. A mistake, when handled the right way, can lead to greater satisfaction than if no mistake had happened at all. Why does this paradox occur? Because people don't judge experiences by the final result alone. They remember the emotional journey. A failure, redeemed through honesty and a gesture that goes beyond expectations, can be remembered as a kind of victory. But this is also a warning. Don't exploit the paradox. Don't create failure on purpose just to fix it later. Because once trust is tested too many times, it doesn't return. Now imagine you're running a wildlife preserve. You want to protect the rabbits, a prey species in the food chain. So you think, let's make their habitat better. More grass, more food, more shelter. What happens? The rabbits thrive, but so do the foxes. Then the foxes eat all the rabbits. The rabbits disappear, and the foxes starve. This is the paradox of enrichment, where an effort to improve a system leads to collapse. We often believe that more is better, but it's not always true. In ecosystems, in society, in economics, balance is the key. Uncontrolled growth pushes systems beyond their natural limits and ends in a chain reaction of failure. This isn't just an ecological story. It's a lesson for every system we create. Education, healthcare, technology, finance. When we keep adding more without understanding the foundation, we may destroy the very thing we're trying to protect. But now, let me take you into a moment you've probably lived yourself. You're holding a lottery ticket. You know the odds. 1 in a million. You know you won't win. And yet, something in your heart whispers, maybe this time it's me.
You picture the moment of victory. You imagine the new house, the dream vacation, your mother's smile. You know, it's impossible. And yet, you believe. That's the lottery paradox, the paradox of probability and belief. Everyone who buys a ticket believes they might win, and yet that belief stands in complete opposition to reality. But this paradox isn't really about lottery tickets. It's about the nature of human hope, in investing, in love, in the dreams we carry through life. We know the odds are small, but we still move forward, because belief doesn't follow the rules of mathematics. So we ask, is hope irrational? Maybe not, because it's that very irrational hope that has carried humanity through every kind of hardship. It's what pushes us to invent, to love, and to rise again after failure. Belief may be paradoxical, but it's also what gives our lives meaning. This chapter isn't just a collection of logic puzzles. It's a mirror held up to how we love, how we believe, and how we fall apart. It asks us, what matters more? Being logically right
or emotionally true. Sometimes it's the contradictions themselves that hold the world together, and sometimes the paradox is the most honest thing there is. Are you ready for the final chapter, where time and destiny are pushed to their very limits?
Chapter 6. When time breaks itself. The paradoxes that challenge reality. Time isn't a smooth, steady river. It stretches, it bends, and sometimes it runs backward. We end this journey with a chapter that opens a doorway to the edge of what is real, a place where time is no longer linear, and every action might fracture the foundation of existence itself. Let's begin with a famous paradox, the twin paradox. Two twins, born in the same moment, but their paths split apart. One remains on Earth, living an ordinary life. The other boards a spaceship and travels through space at near the speed of light. When the traveling twin returns, he's younger than the one who stayed behind. A paradox that forces us to ask, what is time if two people with the same beginning can end up in completely different timelines? This isn't just physics, it's a wake-up call. It makes us question even our deepest intuitions. Is time truly objective, or just an illusion shaped by motion and memory? Is memory real, or just fragments, carefully chosen by a flow that never stays still? Once we're drawn into the maze of time, we meet the bootstrap paradox, a paradox where cause and effect create each other. A man receives a book. Inside are the complete instructions for building a time machine. He travels to the past and gives the book to a younger version of himself. That younger version grows up, rewrites the same book, and sends it back again. So where did the book come from? Who actually created it? We're used to thinking everything must have a beginning, but the bootstrap paradox delivers a direct blow to that belief. In a world where information, objects, even you, can exist in a loop with no point of origin, the idea of a beginning becomes meaningless, as if reality is floating through a maze with no entrance and no exit. And once we're swept into this uncertain spiral, we meet another paradox, the grandfather paradox. If you travel back in time and prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother, then you were never born. But if you were never born, how could you have gone back to stop it from happening? It sounds simple, but it shakes the entire foundation of causality. Your existence depends on something you made impossible. Like a door locked from both sides, this paradox challenges our most basic belief about time, that cause must come before effect. But what if time is a circle? What if every action, past or future, is just a point on a never-ending loop? And as we step deeper into the layers of existence, we arrive at a more poetic paradox, the grain of millet paradox. One grain of millet falls, no sound, but a sack of millet makes a noise. So when does silence become sound? How many grains are enough? This isn't just about hearing, it's a metaphor for life itself. Each small action, a glance, a word, a decision,
may feel like nothing, but over time, they build the echo of an entire life. Are you underestimating the grain of millet in your own story? And once again, we look to the night sky and face a question that refuses to disappear. Olber's paradox. If the universe is infinite and filled with stars, why is the night sky so dark? A question that sounds like it came from a child, yet it overturns all of cosmology. Because that darkness isn't empty. It's the evidence that the universe had a beginning, a boundary, that the light from distant stars hasn't had enough time to reach us yet.
But deeper still, Olber's paradox reminds us that sometimes what seems empty might hold all the answers. That silence can carry an entire symphony, and darkness is the curtain behind which the universe reveals itself. We close our journey with a paradox about perception, the raven paradox. Observing a green apple can be considered evidence for the claim that all ravens are black. It feels absurd, but in formal logic, it holds up. So what should we trust? Logic or intuition? Perhaps the answer lies where emotion and reason meet, where paradoxes aren't just puzzles, but quiet reminders that the world is not simple, and that truth is not always obvious. We end the final chapter with the Stockdale paradox, the paradox of hope and brutal reality. Those who survive torture and war aren't dreamers, and they aren't pessimists. They are the ones who say, "I will survive this," while still having the courage to face the harshest truths. That, too, is perhaps the greatest paradox of life. To live is to hope, but to exist is to accept. And only when we learn to stand between those two, not shattered by reality, not blinded by hope, do we become truly strong. The universe doesn't run on clean, simple rules. It's full of loops, of breaks, of deep and quiet darkness. But in those paradoxes, the ones of time, of logic, of our own human nature, we find something greater. A door into the truth that we live in a complicated but extraordinary world. And perhaps the most beautiful paradox of all is this, that no matter how many contradictions exist, human beings keep asking, keep seeking, keep hoping. Throughout this journey, we've wandered through paradoxes that seemed irrational, but reflected the fragile nature of thought and belief itself. Because sometimes the world doesn't move the way we expect, and it's in that very disorder that we find questions, longing, and hope. If these paradoxes made you pause, made you smile, or simply look up at the night sky for a little longer, then this video has done its job. Thank you for staying until the very end. And don't forget to leave a quiet trace, a like, a comment, as your way of whispering to the universe, "I'm searching too."